what we're going to do is we're going to step outside of our work for a second and say that what we're going to do is we're going to apply two terms here that we're taking from astrology or astronomy. And we're going to apply the term Piscean and Aquarian at super huge levels of metadata, for instance. And so the Piscean age was the age of the rise of the Bible-based religions, Judeo-Christian and Mohammedanism. During this period of time, we shed an old concept, which was the ram, or we'd come out of Aries and we were into a whole new world, which basically went towards control systems, schooling behavior is how we think of it.
Okay.
Fish school, and regardless of whether it's controlled by an individual or so on, it really makes no difference. Now we appear to be going into a larger period of time, or shifting out of that into a period of time in which we can say that it appears that we're going to go towards less central authority, less control, more self-organizing cooperatives, and a whole different tone, if you will, than we found in the last few thousand years. And that this, coincidentally, is Aquarian-based in the sense that in the precession we've shifted over into the age of Aquarius now in a real seriousness. And apparently there's also a shift in consciousness underway.
Can you define how that is and how it's going to affect everything?
I can give you certain emotional pointers to how we'll feel about things, but how we're going to interpret that and react to it is anybody's guess. For instance, those people that are doing badly with the militancy issues are having a real hard time with the militancy thing and are doing their militancy stuff badly because they're probably not really aware that there's this giant militancy thing going on. So once we become aware that we're into this shift, we may decide to harmonize with these values and actually accelerate things. Or we may not. There may be a big backlash to it. I can't predict how people will react that way. But what we can say is that the principles of organization of human behavior has crossed a threshold and is changing as we speak.
Okay. Do you think that is the indicative phrase of humanity's consciousness possibly switching over from the Piscean age to the age of Aquarius?
There certainly is a whole lot of that going on, yes. And it appears that we're going to encounter all kinds of growth, which of course means stress.
Yes, of course.
And reaction to the stress and all of that. Mm-hmm. So, it's not necessarily a bleak forecast because of the nature of the language, but also it's not a birth without pain.
Yeah, but see, what people don't understand, I guess, is that anytime you have a period of growth, something has to break down and give way.
Correct.
So even though it would appear at the time to be a very negative experience, in reality, it's not, because it's the only way that anything, whether it's a tree, whether it's a flower, whether it's a vegetable, whether it's a human being, in order to grow, and especially grow on a spiritual level, something has to break down in order for that individual or that aspect of them has to expand.
Yeah. And it's quite true. And perhaps I could get you to hold that thought for a minute while I rush on over and tweak a machine and get right back.
You betcha. Go ahead.
I'm doing some processing for our next part here, so I've got to attend to this.
I think you did this last time, too. Okay.
Literally a minute and a half or so.
Go ahead, everybody. Yes, Cliff, go ahead. And everybody,
okay.
We are going to, Clif Webbot will be back in just a moment, but my, we are getting into some things, some concepts, some information that I think, as I have said before, if we utilize what Clif is sharing with us, I think what it's offering us is an opportunity to prepare physically, prepare mentally, prepare emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Look at some of the events that Clif has discovered in the different Webbot runs. And before we run out of time, because we only have about 29 minutes left. 19 minutes left. Wow, this has gone fast. We have to know, I hope, what are some of the most important aspects that Clif is picking up in the present Webbot run. This is the fifth, I forget what he calls them, cycle or whatever it is, but this is going on right now. And he just finished, I think, run 5 and is going into run 6. So I sit back and I see what he is doing. I don't pretend to understand it.
Yeah, my apologies for that.
That's okay. That's okay.
It did bring up something, though, along these same lines here.
Okay.
Curiously, one of those far-out fringe areas, I'm in a room over there with an open skylight. Happen to hear another one of those chemtrail jets going over.
Really?
Yeah, they're spraying rather heavily up here the last few days.
Ah, see, we had it last week.
Yeah, and it's an odd use of kerosene. They don't even bother to deny that they're doing it. It's never addressed anywhere, so it pops up into anybody's mainstream news. But
wow.
I can't think of a better example of Piscean kind of behavior, of this layer that we're shifting out of. Now, part of the thing we're picking up arose maybe 1999. First started seeing the appearance of the concept of a singularity.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it's been defined, bulked up a bit, and seems emotionally rather a stable concept that's appearing. And that is the singularity is a rate of change of pretty staggering proportions. Now, the emotional tension release we're seeing for the December period of time comes after a period of several months of emotional building, which began pretty much with the appearance of Cindy Sheehan and the protest at Bush's Ranch. That started building our emotional tension. We had the Katrina that really kicked it way up.
Yeah.
Another Rita hit, and we kicked it up even more. And then small releases as we go along, but never really stepping down from this overall building pattern until we hit November 21. And then we start getting into, actually sometime in mid-November. It's hard to get dates right because we're sort of making it up as we go along. But sometime in there we get this period of shocks originating in the United States. All different kinds of shocks we're showing. They have all different kinds of ramifications, everything from health to money, markets, food, lots of words around restricted movement, which we've been interpreting as meaning shortages.
Shortages
of all different kinds.
Or martial law.
Correct. Or a restriction on travel, any different kind of thing. Could just be simply the fuel costs are so high, nobody can go anywhere. Different kinds of things like that all build to this rather startling emotional level. I would have to say that's about 3 times what we saw prior to the Sumatran earthquake.
Wow.
Yeah, but
jeez.
And that actually could be good because since we're picking it up, maybe it's all political, and therefore it wouldn't be quite the nasty disaster sort of thing, right? The Sumatra earthquake sort of came out of the blue for everybody.
That aspect is true, but several more to consider. Number one, if indeed there is human manipulation in weather,
correct,
that could be what it is, and secondly, restrictive movement could mean that they're going to declare martial law.
Correct.
Oh man.
So we can't rule that out. What we do see is that there's underlying themes, though, that suggest that those who are control freaks are going to have a real rough time of it because they're not harmonizing with the general overall metadata trends of rebellion. Now, what's curious about this rebellion we keep seeing is that although there are words that would suggest an actual civil war, unlike the mainstream media, which is promoting a culture war, this is more of a class war, and it's basically all of us against a very small them, and it has instances in which it's surrounded by emotional values going towards money and haves and have-nots and so on. But we shouldn't get too caught up in it because there's this whole new flavor of the rebellion thing developing, which goes back to that idea of joining in the singularity, and perhaps the rebellion might even be thought of as maybe a rising metadata layer that we won't see take that position until later, but it may be indicating that we're going to get to the point where radical new kinds of thinking or acceptance or something along those lines, such as maybe a big shock that, oh geez, there's other critters than humans out there trucking around.
That would do it.
I sure would.
That would get my attention real quick.
Okay, now let me tell you that when we've done a long-range scan on, and this is accurate